get started. I'm Russell Valentine. I'm Vice President NEKAAL. I'm also running the meeting tonight. If you can, we'll just go around and introduce each other. Maybe we'll start with Tony.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Castaneda.
Michael, you want? Would you like to introduce? I don't think we've met before. Michael Basario, is it? Okay. Anyway, hi, Sanford.
Oh, hi. Hi.
And I see Tim. I know Gary is the grayed out one. Nathan, I don't know if I've met Nathan, but welcome, Nathan. And Dave.
Oh.
Okay.
Is there a way to see more than 6 people? My screen's only showing 6 people. Is there a way to see more than that, or is that somehow is that just limited?
Okay, it's probably because I had my screen shared. Do you see more people now? Or do you mean their video? Some people have their camera off or it hasn't.
No, yeah, I know, but no, I only see 6. I only have 6 squares.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that's just the way it works.
It might work that way on the iPad. So when I have 2, 4, 6, 8. I have 9 on my screen.
Oh, okay, I'll start using the computer to do this, but okay, yeah. That's all right.
Okay. All right, just a few announcements before we get to the presentation. April 1st, there's a new moon. So if you want to look out at the night sky around then, be a good time. Although, yeah, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but hopefully it'll be clear. April 2nd is Members Night. So if you've never been to one of those, I know a few members are going. So it's a great time to look around at the equipment or just do your own thing out at Farpoint. It'll start around sunset time. So if you can make it, hopefully it'll be a good time. April 16th is full moon, and April 23rd is the public astronomy night. That's also around the Lyrids peak, which gets around 10 to 15 an hour in at its peak, and the moon rises at 2:48 a.m. So might be good to see the meteor, that meteor shower then during the public night. And it's the first one of the year. And April 28th is our next general meeting, and hopefully this one will be a hybrid one, or it'll be a at least a somewhat in-person one at the library. And then April 30th again is the new moon. So, does anyone have any other events that they know about that they want to share? Okay.
I'll just make mention that there's an asteroid occultation that's taking place Saturday night, kind of early. I think it's around 8 o'clock for Sandlot Observatory and Farpoint Observatory. So if anybody's interested in doing that, talk to either Dave or I or Russ.
Thanks, Gary. Next we have a Tombaugh update. Gary, you gave me this to put up, I think, on screen. Did you want to comment about it or anything? This is about the Tombaugh telescope. They took the mirror out.
Gary may be on mute.
Yes. Okay. Are we going?
I
Can
can
you
hear
hear
you
me?
now. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Do you have it up on screen yet? I don't see it. But
Yeah, 1 second.
okay.
Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. Well, I don't see it online. But that's okay. Because I've got hard copy anyway. All right. So I just want to explain a little bit about what we're doing. For a long, long time, we've had the Tombaugh trying to do some imaging with it, but that tube was so long and it was such a wind kite that we didn't get much use out of it that way. So we decided that maybe we could try for um, a reduced focus, a reduced focal length mirror that will give us a shorter tube and therefore less wind resistance. Um, but in the meantime, and we were fortunate enough to have got a grant to cover the cost of the mirror from Mount Cuba Astronomical Society or Foundation um, for about $28,000, I think, total. So, but this allows us to change the focal length of the primary mirror from 148.5 inches to 81-inch focal length. So that's a big change. That goes from an f5.5 to an f3. That f3 that'll change the tube length from roughly about 12 foot 4 inches to 6 foot 8 inches. So that's a pretty major reduction. The eyepiece will still be on the west side of the telescope tube at about 6 foot from the bottom of the telescope tube. So it shouldn't take more than just a couple step ladder to be able to actually look through the Tombaugh. In order to switch from visual imaging, it should be easy enough to do. All we got to do is loosen up 2 bolts and pull out the secondary mirror, and that allows a straight shot for the light to go through where the diagonal was, straight through to the camera that sits at prime focus, and the prime focus is right at the end of the tube where the camera is going to be. It's not going to be off the side; it'll be right in the middle of the tube. So it will take once you remove the secondary off of the tube or the holder, then it's a straight shot to the end of the camera. So it's an interesting design because I don't know that there's very many people that do it this way, but with our setup, given the size of our mirror and that sort of thing, it's something that we could actually easily do, assuming I get all my coordinates and all my numbers right. So in order to switch, if we're going to be imaging with the telescope, then all we have to do is leave the diagonal off, and we've got light coming straight into the camera. And then if we want to look visually through the scope out to the side, we'll put the diagonal back in. It'll have a registration pins so that we just get it exactly the same spot every time. So we don't have to keep tweaking it all the time. And it should work well for visual use. It's a very quick thing. In a couple of minutes, we could go either imaging or go through it visually. So I think it would be a good deal. All right. So for visual use, we just replace the secondary mirror in its register position. The QHY 600 camera that we're purchasing via the Planetary Society grant, Shoemaker grant, will give us about a 1 degree by 2/3 degree field of view. The pixels are very small. They're 3.87 micron pixels. Currently, our pixels are 9 micron on the camera we're using right now. Yes. Okay. Okay, so that gives us a much larger field of view than we're used to using right now. And keep in mind that our other camera that we're using right now gives us about the same field of view. So even before we get the new camera in, our old camera will still get us about a degree. So that's a big change from about I think it's about 26 arc minutes right now. So we'll have 4 times the imaging area that we used to have. And of course, using a 17.3 millimeter eyepiece that we have on site, visually it works out to about 118.92 times magnification. So gives you kind of an idea. And the field of view of it is about 0.6 degrees. So covers bigger than the full moon. Okay. The focal length will change, and I didn't write the original down, but it's somewhere around 3,800. From 3,800 millimeters to about 2,057 millimeters. So quite a sizable difference. Janelle, do you need something?
No.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Has anybody got any questions? I'm sure there's lots of questions, but.
Well, Gary, I might add, because I don't know if everybody listening knows, that we're able to do this because NEKAAL received 2 grants, one from Mount Cuba, and the other one is our second Planetary Society Shoemaker grant. And we just got that last month. And thanks to Gary and a few others that helped write this, including Gary's wife, Cindy. So if you add up the grants, they get close to or a little over $40,000. So a big thank you to everybody that helped get these grants done, especially Gary.
Yay.
Cool.
I have a question. Okay, how? And maybe you answered this, and I just missed it. But how far can you see with this new one? And maybe that's not the way to ask the question, but how deep can you see? Is it roughly equal to what we had or less?
Well, it kind of depends on several factors. First of all, this camera that we're got on order hasn't arrived yet, but got on order is a very large camera size or a chip size. It's about the size of a full frame, like a Canon EOS, not a Canon EOS, but a full frame Canon or Nikon camera. So it's 35 millimeter by 24 millimeter. So it's a bigger camera, but the pixel sizes are a lot smaller. That said, the quantum efficiency of those pixels, because it's a back illuminated chip, gives it a much greater sensitivity. So when we combine those pixels together in a 3x3 bin, for those of you who know something about this, it gives us a pretty good sensitive camera, and hopefully will be more sensitive than what we've had in the past with our other camera, with our current camera. So yeah, I think we'll be able to use it and get fainter objects faster. So that's really the goal here. I don't know how else to answer your question. I mean, it's kind of I think we'll have as good or better sensitivity, and we'll have a bigger field of view. So
No, I think you
given
answered. I think you answered the question just fine. My second question is, what do you have plans for the old mirror?
the old mirror is actually belongs to Kansas University, is crated up right now, and soon it will go back to KU.
Oh, okay. I just didn't. I thought if they said we don't want it, if if the historical society might have some interest in it, but anyway.
I suspect KU will take it back. I mean, I think I've sent a note to Dr. Twarwag, and he's passing that on to individuals that at the astronomy department there in KU. So hopefully I'll hear back from them pretty soon. But I am pretty positive they're going to want it back. Now, what they do with it, they may put it in mothballs. I don't know, but that's their decision. It's actually their mirror. It's state property, so we don't really have a choice. It's got to go back to them.
Right. Yes. Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Anybody else? Okay, well, the whole thing is going to take a couple of months to get it done. So check back with me in a couple of months, and I'll let you know what we're really going to be doing with it.
Okay. I just thought of something else, and
Okay.
Is the position of the telescope going to be the same as the old one, and does that limit the direction that you could see?
It shouldn't make a whole lot of difference. We may, and depending on how we go about this, we may lower the telescope, the whole assembly down a little bit. I don't know. I'm not sure that that's going to be worth, whatever height lowering we get out of it. It won't be very much that way, but we'll have you'll be able to use a step ladder, just a 3-step step ladder, to view just about anything in the sky. So that will shorten the tube tremendously. The tube, like I say, goes from 12.5 feet down to 6'8". So a lot of difference. So it should make it a lot easier to use, both visually and much less wind resistance. It will still have the same position. We're not going to change the position of where it sits in the observatory, and so it shouldn't make a whole lot of difference on the angle of the telescope tube what it's available to point to. It will actually help a little bit in doing a north pole region. We won't have to worry about hitting the roof anymore.
That's right.
Okay, sounds good. Does anyone have anything else? All right, thanks for going over that, Gary.
Sure.
Yay!
Does anyone else have any announcements before we go to tonight's constellation? All right. So the constellation we were going to talk about is Canes Venatici. I don't know if that's how you say it right, but
Canies.
Canes. All right. So I won't go over too much of it. I just this one I think gets overlooked a lot. I don't remember very many presentations on it. And when I was looking over the history of it, that it actually, if I understand right, could only be there because of a bad translation. So if you actually, I'll bring this over 1 second. Yeah, so it's like, the translation is if I guess was rather is over if it had to do with what booties, if he's holding a hook or if he's holding dogs. That's what I understood. So so you'll see some pictures, like this is in Stellarium where he has a hook, but you also will see pictures where he's holding a leash instead, and then it goes to the dogs and canes there. So yeah, so that's kind of a interesting one. It's also more from because of the bad translation. Basically, it's a bad translation during the say like Renaissance or medieval period over some bad translation, I think, of Arabic, and so it's one of the constellations that are actually not, or that are not from Greek, or that are from the Renaissance or medieval period. So that's a little interesting, and it also I think it's a great constellation because it's really high during this time of year. If you do get a clear sky, and a moonlit sky or a moonless sky, there's a number of nice objects to look at, like the Whirlpool Galaxy. So I think I have this right. It's like I have this in Stellarium at 218 for tonight. That's close to how high it gets, and look at the altitude is 80 degrees high. A lot of the rest of the time of the year, this will be a lot lower at night. So it's a great time to see like the Whirlpool Galaxy or some of these galaxies if you haven't seen them before. The problem, though, of course, is that in the spring it rains a lot, and farmers like to burn their fields. So if it is a clear night, you might have that problem. But if they're not burning the fields and it's not raining, it might be a good idea to look at this constellation. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Whirlpool Galaxy, but it's kind of a neat one because it's two galaxies that are merging. I believe it's this one here that's sucking in the other one, but and you could see this in a lot of telescopes. My 8-inch Dob could see it. The 12-inch in the Kessler could see this. I've seen it, and if you are dark adapted, you can actually see the arms in the galaxy. And a way I find this galaxy is you'll notice, like, even though Whirlpool Galaxy is in this constellation, it's actually very close to the Big Dipper. So here's the Big Dipper, which I'll zoom out a little bit, right? Let me turn off the art. So you have, the Big Dipper here. And if you go to the last star on the Big Dipper and just go down a little bit, you could usually find the Whirlpool Galaxy. Sometimes that's how I find it. I just find this star first, and then I just push my telescope in the right direction there. But there's also a number of other Messier objects that are kind of cool in the area, like Sunflower Galaxy. And whoops.
When you say if it's dark enough, you mean you find a place that's really dark, or just a dark sky? Because I know you live in Lawrence. Do you pack up and move your stuff someplace like your 8-inch, or do you, or can you can't see that from your backyard, can you?
Actually, it's bright enough to see the Whirlpool Galaxy from my backyard, and I actually taken a picture of it in Lawrence. I could bring it up real quick. But yeah, it's a fairly bright object. I mean, in the city, I probably can't see the arms with my eye, but I took this in Lawrence.
Oh,
So
okay. Huh. Well, you can kind of see the arms there.
yeah.
Huh. Well, good one. Okay, thanks.
But yeah, like, when I guess I'm seeing, like, maybe you're at far point and there's not a moon, then you should be able to see the arms with your eyes. I mean, I guess if you have good eyes too, but I've seen the arms with my eyes. Hopefully you can too. I do think, though, it takes practice. If you just bring someone who's first time ever looking at a galaxy, they probably won't see the arms, even if it's really dark. They just don't notice it most of the time. Sometimes I show the public when they're out this object, and usually someone will just see one smudge, and some people will see two smudges, and then people that have done observing a lot could see the arms. All right. Would anyone else like to talk about anything about this constellation?
I was just going to say one thing. Canis venatici is supposed to be hunting dogs, but there's a star in there. It's called Cor Caroli, and that means Heart of Charles. And that was the king at the time. So I'm going to name this after him so he'll be nice to me. It just shows you that astronomers have to deal with the politics of the time, too. And then the other one at the end is called Shara, and that's was going to be the name of my dog because that's what it means. It's a dog's name, but I lost out to somebody else. But it's sort of interesting on some of these, the way things get named and cut apart and everything else. So I just thought that one was kind of interesting because it's kind of called brown nosing the king, if you will.
So, hey, Russ, over by the Big Dipper, I had no idea there was a galaxy called the Vacuum Cleaner Galaxy.
Oh, yes.
Is that real? I'm assuming.
I mean, a lot of these names, they're not like official names. They're just things that commonly people call them.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
you could if you type the Vacuum Cleaner Galaxy, you get pages on this thing.
Oh, wow.
I think you might hear it as a different name usually. Sometimes these names that are in Stellarium, I haven't heard them called that name before. I hear them with some other name.
Yeah, I don't see a vacuum cleaner, so.
Got an interesting bar, though. It's kind of that whole area is just sort of looks like a big thing. The old things used to put on 45 records. Remember those, Gary? But it's just the way it looks right there is kind of unusual.
So, Russ, you might tell people on the watching is Stellarium has a web version and a download version, and it's very useful at night.
Oh yeah, we'll go over hopefully installing and using it tonight.
Oh, great!
Right, so yeah, I could show you both. I was hoping to mostly go over the desktop version, but if someone wants to follow along with the web version, that's okay too. Let's see. So, but yes, so our main topic was planning, observing, and photography sessions, and so I wanted to mainly go over two tools that I found pretty helpful. And if you are up for it, you could you could go to you could download and use these tools while we're talking about it, and if you have any questions, we could try answering it. So one of the first tools is a website, and then the second tool is Stellarium, which was I just had opened. But the first tool is a website called Telescopius, and it's at telescopius.com. So if you feel like it, you could open your web browser and go to telescopius.com. And I believe you can use it without an account, but you get a number of advantages by creating an account. And I'll talk about a little bit about some of those advantages. But I think this is it's a pretty nice tool to try to figure out what you want to observe or take a picture of. So I'll go over some of the features here, but if you are up for it, you could open a website and go to this as well. If you have trouble going to it, let me know. We could pause and we could help you out. I was hoping this could be more like a sort of a workshop meeting. So feel free to speak up or something if you need something, because someone else might have.
I got on it without having to log in, Russ, for the record.
Great. Yeah. One second. And I might need to take a few pauses too, because I'm currently sick, so I might need to cough once in a while. Just be patient. All right. So telescopius.com. Basically, if you were wanting to know what things could I observe tonight, this is a great utility to help. So when you first go to it, it gives you like a quick overview of just a couple objects that it might want, and you could click like what you're wanting for, if you're wanting galaxies or cluster galaxies. But what's really nice is that you could do a lot more. If you go to targets and deep sky, you could really create a whole bunch of filters and stuffs. But but you do want to make sure is that your observing settings over here on the left is correct. So if you are logged in, you could add a bunch of you could add frequent locations, so you could easily switch between them. So I'm just going to set for home. And then you could also pick your date, and it shows the weather within the last week and the sun and the moon phase. So if you could say, all right, I'm at home next week on Thursday is when I'm going to do my observing. But you could go and pick a different day or pick a different location. And if you create an account, you could add one so that they're really easy to pick. Otherwise, I think you could just put it in manually, or have it auto detect where it thinks you're currently located at. Does anyone have questions so far?
Nope.
Oh, I will open this up so people can see where I click. Show click. Okay. All right. So after you click on targets, deep sky, you could have these nice search parameters. So I already picked the day for March 31st, and I'm gonna pick what objects I want to have up at a certain time. So let's say I'm only going to be looking at stuff between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So it doesn't really matter if something is up at 3 a.m. I don't really care, because that's not when I'm looking. I'm going to be looking at stuff. And I probably also only care if it's a certain height. If it's only 10 degrees high, it's probably not going to look very nice. So you could just select how many degrees high you want it to be, and it'll automatically filter out things that will not be that high. So you could pick, so yeah, I want it to be that high for at least a certain amount of time. So it could just be 15 minutes or 2 hours, but I'm just gonna say, like, for this example, I thought, okay, it's above 45 degrees for at least 2 hours. It gives you a good window to find it maybe, you're at another object for another time, but at least 2 hours at 45 degrees or higher, I'm interested in. If you know that the moon's going to be up, you could also select how far away you want it to be from the moon. And you could also select what kind of objects you want. So if you're interested in galaxies or nebula, maybe I'm not looking at dark nebula. So just bright nebula, diffuse nebula, supernova remnants, sure. Whatever you want to look at. I'm just going to stick with these, but you could select whatever you like. So there's apparent magnitude, but something I like better is surface brightness. So magnitude's kind of nice for stars, but I think surface brightness is where it's at when you're actually wanting to look at an object to know if you could see it. Whether that's taking a picture of it or looking at it with your eyes with the camera. Surface brightness, magnitude basically is a measure of all the light that the object is, but surface brightness will give you an indication of how bright it is over how spread out it is. So if you know an object's surface brightness already, and anything dimmer than like maybe that Whirlpool Nebula I was talking about, perhaps is too dim for me. So then you could set your limits on your surface brightnesses. So I might set it to 15 here. So it might be hard to know what is this warning? Okay, it's magnitude per squared arc second. So it's kind of hard to know what that means. So it might be easier just to look at an object that you know. 1 second. Yeah, object that you know, and see what their surface brightness is, and then you could set it to that. I'm just going to turn off unknown surface brightnesses. Okay. Gary, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still here.
All right. That's good.
That 15 you put in there, that's the maximum, right? So where it says from to 15 would have been the maximum brightness, maximum certain surface brightness.
Right, and magnitude is also kind of hard because let's see, the higher it is, the dimmer it is. Right. So yeah, so this is actually, I had it figured out the other day. Let's see. So I want between, I would want anything brighter than, I don't know. So what if I put 15 in here? What does it do? Okay. I only have one right now. I'm not sure. Oh, because I have this set. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So yeah, maybe I don't want anything dimmer than 15. So, okay, I put 15 in here, and let's see, did it really give me stuff dimmer than that? So what if I click on here? Surface brightness 15.3. Okay.
Okay, so all right.
Surface brightness, okay, still 15.3. So yeah, I think you have to put it in that second box. So this one I'm going to just have, anything till 15. So if it's more than 15, I don't want to see it. Now it goes away. So That's what I want.
Oh, huh. Okay.
It was just it still remembered my my size I put in earlier. That's why it was tricking me. But yeah, so if you want anything brighter than 15, put the 15 in the last box. Okay. So yeah, this pinwheel galaxy should be more surface brightness than 15. Yep, 14.9. So this is just at the limit. Okay. But also, brightness isn't the only thing. If you have to do a lot of magnification, you're only going to see a dot, or it's going to be dim, and you won't see anything. So one thing to keep in mind, like how I said, it's say you didn't want to see anything dimmer than the Whirlpool Nebula, so you put 15 in there. But if it's something that you need a Barlow to see, that kind of halves the brightness that you would expect. So now you would you'd probably want to change it to 14 instead if you're going to have to use a Barlow. But maybe it's just like, forget Barlow. I want to see stuff at a certain size. You could also specify how big to show things, or how big it is. So you could put limits there. You could set it to show small things or big things on your list. So let's go I want everything from I want, yeah. So let's go if I want maybe 10 arc minutes to infinity, I should get, nothing smaller than 10 arc minutes. So when we go to Stellarium, I could show you an easy way that you can measure how big things are, but you could also look up objects that you know and see how big they are. When you click on an object, there's a data sheet that comes on the side here, and it shows the size, which is 28 by 26 arc minutes. Yeah, and the surface brightness. So if you already know an object, you could search for it on here. So let's go. How big is the Ring Nebula? Three by 2.4, right? So my 15, the ring won't show up, but it has a surface brightness of 10.7, so quite a bit bigger, brighter than the Whirlpool Nebula. So those are the main things that I look for when I want to know what I'm going to image, and maybe if you want to know what you're going to see. But it might be nice to be able to see, have an idea of what it might look like when you look at it through a telescope or use your camera. And this also has an option to figure that out. There's a telescope simulator. And one of the things that's nice if you set up your own account is that you could add your own equipment to here. I haven't added that much, but this is especially helpful if you are for astrophotography. You could get your field of view set up, and you could switch between lenses, and it has so you put in all that information in, and you could switch between them, and it kind of shows you how it fits in your frame, and you could switch cameras. The details, the specifics of what you type in here, I'm going to go over when I talk about Stellarium. So some of these values, if you don't know exactly what they are, I'll talk about them later. Just get the idea that in Telescopus, you could enter that information and see how things frame and stuff before you go out. And another thing here is this shows the altitude throughout the night. So if you want to know when it reaches its peak, you could go here. You can, and then it's nice right now. It's sorted by magnitude, but I also like to sort by transit time. So you can go to the things that peak first. So if I was going to do a galaxy hunting session, I'm like, okay, I want everything over 45 degrees. I only want galaxies. And I only want big galaxies. And I only want galaxies that are certain brightness. So boom, now I could go to them in the order that I know they peak in. So if there'd be this one, and I could just go through throughout the night until my time's up at 2 a.m. It's a nice list that I could go through. If I'm using the 12-inch at Farpoint, I could just write down these NGC numbers and go through them. So I thought this website's pretty cool. There's a lot more features to it too. You could add your astrophotography pictures, and other people could look at them. A lot of these pictures are actually, when you click on something, it actually goes through other people's pictures that they uploaded of the object. So if you're doing astrophotography, you can see what other people have done.
So a little bit ago, you were showing, you listed kind of your equipment and so forth. So the image what it shows in that frame is typical of what the image you might get if you took that picture. Is that right?
At least that's how it would fit in my camera. That's a possibility of how it could fit in my camera. Yeah.
Huh.
So yeah. So given the lens or the telescope and my particular camera, it should fit in the frame like this.
Wow.
With these settings that I put. So I only put my 600 millimeter and 200 millimeter in here, and I only put one of my cameras in here. So, but yeah. So right now it's on Andromeda. Right. So this is how Andromeda fits when I'm at my 600 millimeter with this ASI 600 cool. But you could change it to something else too. So let's do Whirlpool, right? So now we're at the Whirlpool. So 600 millimeter in my camera, it's kind of small, but it does go in there.
That's pretty amazing.
Now I'll show you in Stellarium. Stellarium can also do this, and so it's pretty nice there too. And I'll show that to you also. And I'll also go over the values that you need to know in order to set this up. And you put the similar values in this website and also Stellarium. So I just wanted to go over those type of values once. But Stellarium, it's also really neat. That was about it for the introduction for Telescopus before I moved to Stellarium. But did anyone have any questions besides of putting your gear equipment in about this website?
I do like the nighttime mode button up there underneath that. It's kind of neat.
Oh yeah, and you can maybe go full screen with it. That is kind of cool. All right. So next would be Stellarium. If you can, hopefully some of you have this downloaded already. If not, you could go to stellarium.org, and then you pick the one that's for your device, and then you could install it. It's free software, and it's pretty good. If you do not have a desktop, though, or you do not want to install it, there is the web version, and you can just click on it, and it loads up here. This is pretty good too, but I like the desktop version a lot better. But if you want to, you can try to follow along in here. It'll just be it'll be a little bit different. I could try switching back and forth if someone has questions based off which one they're using. Does anyone have any questions about getting Stellarium? Okay. So let's open up Stellarium then. All right, so Stellarium's also pretty nice to try to plan stuff out because it also will help you find it if you do not have a go-to telescope. Telescopus is nice, you could get a list of objects, but it's not as good as to familiarize yourself with the nighttime sky, or say like, okay, I'm gonna go to this star first, and then go to this star, and then it's in between this star and another star, and try to plan it that way. So maybe you can use Telescopus to get your nice list. Although this has some tools to get a list too of stuff you want to see. But you can use this to really plan out your session. So I just wanted to go over a few things on this quickly. Okay. Well, when you open it, it should go to your current local time. The location might not be set if you're using the desktop version. On the web version, it tries to auto-detect from your browser where you're located at. So the first thing you might want to do is just set your location. And to do that, you go here on the left and click on this location window button. And the closer you get to where you are, the more accurate it will be. But for most cases, it's good enough if you just go to the closest city. So you should be able to type Topeka and click on that and go there. And if you want to use it as your current location as default, so the next time that you open it up, it'll be in Topeka, just check this box here. Okay. There's also a couple other options you might want to do before you start looking. There's a bunch of sky and viewing window. There's a bunch of options in sky and viewing options window. But you could go around and play around with it anytime. But let's see. Markings. Oh. I like to turn on the meridian, which is the middle of the sky. I'll put this green marker here. It kind of helps me keep my bearings. If you want constellation borders, you could go in Star Lore and do the show boundaries. So, and you could display which catalogs you want. I usually just do M, IC, and GC because it depends on what stuff you're looking for. And then in the configuration menu, there's a few things and information that are nice to have when you're trying to plan your reserving session. I like to have additional information checked. I wish this was a little bit more fine-grained besides just additional information, but you need additional information checked in order to get the surface brightness I was talking about earlier in Telescopius, if you want to know an object's surface brightness. And oh yeah, and in plugins, there's a few plugins that are nice for helping to observe. Oculars. So if you go into plugins and click Oculars, you want to make sure Oculars loads at startup. And hold on, let me check my notes. Oh, and angle measure is nice too. So if one of those were not set for load at startup, click on it and then quit and go back in so that they'll be on. If you do not have Oculars enabled, then you won't have this bar up here. And that bar is nice for later. So a few little tips about the controls that are down here. These are buttons to control constellation lines and labels. This one controls the art. This one's an equatorial grid. So, here's where the celestial pole is. And if if you need to, you can make the ground go away, and you can make atmosphere go away, so it doesn't really matter if it's day or night. And then another thing would be is you could select, if it shows deep sky objects, if it highlights them. These are your time controls. So, it's a little too bright still. Let's say I want to plan for around 10 o'clock. So I could just speed up time by hitting this a couple times and then hitting go. Or you can also go to this date and time window, and you could set what day, what time you want to be at. So just like Telescopius, you notice this deep sky objects one has markers for, maybe objects that might be interested for you to look at or view. So one of the tools that you could do is you could limit by angular size here also. So let's see, notice how I have all these here, and I'm gonna say really increase it, and they start disappearing. So in this case, I'm doing limit angular size between 6 and 600. So if it's out of this range, then I don't show it. So, if I didn't want stuff that was super small, when I go super small, then a lot more things show up. So that's one way you could pick. I wish there was something like that for the surface brightness. I think this is what this check is supposed to do, but in my experience, it doesn't seem to work that well. I don't know what setting that you do to change the surface brightness if it shows up on here. But you can also use magnitude, but remember, for a lot of deep sky objects like nebula, the magnitude isn't always what you want to know if you want to take a look at it or take an image of it. It's more of the surface brightness. Okay, so let's say I want to visualize, I want to see the Whirlpool Nebula, or I want to take a picture of it. I could search for it. I could hit Control F, and I could. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, if you do not have dual monitors and you want to follow what I'm doing, but only have one monitor, you can hit F11 in Stellarium, and it goes into window mode. So then hopefully you could see my screen and also Stellarium, and then your own version of Stellarium if you're trying to follow along there. So sorry I didn't say that earlier. Are there any questions what I talked about so far? Okay. Okay, so let's say I want Whirlpool Nebula. I could use Whirlpool, or Galaxy is what I meant. Galaxy. I could go there. If there's something I want, I could click on it and I could hit spacebar to center on it, and then I could zoom in on object by using the mouse scroll wheel. You can also use page up and page down. We got the Whirlpool Galaxy, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but I want to know what it looks like in my eyepiece or in my camera. So this is where the oculars thing is very handy. So let's say I want to know what it looks like in my eyepiece. I could take this ocular view, and I could go through different eyepieces I have and different telescopes that I have. So this is my 8-inch Newtonian with my Orion Sirius Plausible 25mm eyepiece. It should show up sort of like this. Or what happens if I put a Barlow on it? This is what it could look like when I put a Barlow. Or what if I go to 10mm? Now the brightness isn't simulated, just like the magnification. So I put these eyepieces in, and there's already some that are in there. To see what is already in there, or to add or edit what's in there, you click this plugin configuration button, and you can go to eyepieces, and you can add them, delete them, but if you wanted to add your own, you could put your name and a few things. there's basically two things that it really needs. It needs the A field of view. Let's see, A stands for, again, I forgot. Actual field of view or something. But you can often find this. It's the field of view of your eyepiece, but you can often find this at the manufacturer's website. Although it's not always that accurate. It has to do with what your field stop is in your eyepiece, and a lot of time, and you can measure that, but a lot of times the field stop is in between two pieces of glass. I mean, sometimes it's the holding screw, but a lot of times it's in between two pieces of glass. But if you look where you bought your eyepiece, a lot of times it will advertise the AFOV, and then so you can put that in. So then you can put your eyepiece your focal length in, your AFOV, and it should try to simulate what it would look like using a particular telescope. And you could do the same then with your telescopes. So, my 8-inch Newtonian, you put in the focal length, put in diameter. I don't know why you need the diameter. It doesn't seem like it ever uses it, but anyway. And you could play around with the horizontal, vertical flip, and equatorial mount, or horizontal, vertical, and it's basically just has to do with how it moves when you're in ocular view, or the angle it might have the camera when you put in cameras. But you could put in different eyepieces. You could put in Barlows, focal reducers, and then it will try to simulate what it might look like when you're out actually looking at stuff. And you can also put in binoculars. So I haven't actually put any, but yeah. So I think binoculars are, part of the eyepieces. When you add one, you just make sure those binoculars are checked. They have a few default binoculars in here, like this 10 by 40s. So if we switch to that, you could go. Oh yeah, here's 15 by 50s. So it tries to give you an idea of what it might look like in different binoculars. And if you could, get the information of your binoculars, you could try to simulate what things might look like with your binoculars or different eyepieces. So let me show you this real quick. So, I said they're on the manufacturer's website. So here's the Orion. And they say, these plossels after apparent field of view. That's what it is, a 52-degree apparent field of view. So if you bought this eyepiece in AFOV, you'd put 52 degrees. And if you search for how to calculate apparent field of view, there's a lot of forums that could try to help you if you don't believe the manufacturer. And there's also an experimental way that you could figure it out, or basically, and you can use a lot of calculations. I'll put this website up. Online later, but it has a bunch of ways that you could calculate your apparent field of view, and one of them is to get your real field of view using, or your actual field of view with all your telescope and your particular eyepiece by timing how long a star goes from one edge of your eyepiece to the other edge of the eyepiece, and then you could back calculate to a field of view if you need to. So this website is kind of neat for on this topic. It's Astronomy Hacks. It's a little add-on for us. There's a book, I guess, called Astronomy Hacks, and this was just a little add-on for it. but it talks about apparent field of view and a lot of ways to determine it and your actual total field of view. So I'll link this later. Oh, true field of view. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. True field of view. The true field of view would be when your eyepiece is actually in the telescope, like what you actually see. So that'd be the circle that this makes. Yeah, so notice when I select an object that has this information here, here's that surface brightness because I included additional information. But there's a lot of good stuff here too. But let's say you wanted to do astrophotography, so you could also put in your camera information in here. And this would be, represents the camera frame. And you could select different cameras that you have. And you can select different telescopes. So this would be, so I think I have the club, one of the club color cameras, and then also the LX 212-inch. The Whirlpool Galaxy fits in there pretty good. But you could also try, say if I want to use my 600 millimeter. That's how it would fit in. And it tells you how many arc seconds per pixel you get. And it tells you the dimensions of your field. 2 degrees, 14 minutes, 1 degree, 25 minutes.
Now, would those be those pictures of the Whirlpool Galaxy you showed just a bit ago? Would those be multiple images that have been stacked? That's not one image, one shot, is it?
The image itself is not exactly what you'd get. Like, it depends what you end up doing. This is just mainly how it would fit in your frame.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, however, like a lot of these images that are in Stellarium are not that good, and some of them are actually pretty good. So, I mean, what you see in Stellarium is just what's been uploaded and is part of Stellarium. What you actually get will depend on your sky conditions and how long your exposure is. So it doesn't. None of the tools I gave you so far, I guess, tell you recommended exposure times and stuff like that. That's kind of a more advanced topic, and maybe we could talk about that later.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, probably to get something like this would take, it's not just a 10-second picture with this equipment.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so to do this, you would need to add your cameras, and so just in Telescopus, you could put this information in too. So I already showed that you could add telescopes, but you can also add cameras under sensors. And when you add a sensor, you put in stuff. You look up your camera spec information, and you put in the resolution, X and Y, your chip width, and your pixel size in microns. So, I mean, all this stuff maybe sounds a little bit confusing, but if you look up, like if I know I had a certain kind of camera and I just type in that camera specs, I can usually go to either a manufacturer's page or a store that sells them, that they list these specs. And so all you gotta do is you go through and add your cameras and put in these specs, and then you could just easily switch through them in ocular mode. So yeah, here's like a different camera, the IMX224. So you can just put in all your different cameras, all your different scopes, and you could figure out what you want to use. Or if you're doing visual, what eyepieces you might want to use, stuff like that. So Telescopus also needs this information when you add a camera in their telescope simulator. So you still need the resolution and chip width and all that. So once that's set up, you could say, okay, I'm gonna be out at Farpoint tonight at say 10 o'clock. What stuff is there to look at? It's like, well, look at all these. These fit at least the criteria for apparent size. what about this thing? I'm gonna center on it, zoom in. I can see how it fits in my frame. Like, oh, that's kind of neat. There's two galaxies that's there. Maybe that's what I'll end up taking a picture of and seeing, like, how's it fit? I don't want to just do this, having this right at the center might not be the best to also get this image. So maybe I'll like try to go here, and I can try to plan that ahead of time. Notice, like, always though, this is fixed, this square, and so you can rotate your camera in real life. You just rotate it in the eyepiece holder. But how you do that here is that there's also another setting called rotation angle, and you can just change that. So this also lets you plan, how you might want to rotate your camera to get like the frame that you want. So yeah, anyone have any questions? Oh yeah, I was going to do angle measure. So I think there's a few objects that are not in Stellarium that are not totally accurate, but it's fairly good. So let's say I wanted to go to the rosette. And maybe I'm curious how big it is. Let me turn this off. Okay. When you enable angle measure, you could measure how wide things are, or just the center of it, or the distance between two objects. So if you're doing visual work and you're trying to figure out how to find something, let's just use that Whirlpool galaxy again as an example. So it's like, okay, so I go to this, I go to the last star of the Big Dipper and I go down, but how far do I go down? Like, I kind of don't have an idea of scale here. You can actually measure it with this angle measure. It'd be like, yeah, about 4 degrees. So.
Cool.
So that might be helpful, especially for visual observers. Or if you wanted to go this pinwheel, it's like it's almost in between halfway in here. But if I'm going diagonal, it's about 5 degrees up here. So the angle measure could be nice. If you have like some type of intuitive idea of moving your telescope, how many angles you maybe moved it. When you do have angle measure set, you can't really move in Stellarium. You have to turn it off before you can move again. Okay. Any last comments anyone has?
I think this has been really interesting. It's one of those things where you really got to spend the time to get in there and figure it out and do all that. But it looks like it's the juice is worth the squeeze, I guess. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, I'll stay on for a little bit after the meeting if anyone has any particular questions that you want to talk about with the Telescopius or Stellarium. If I don't know if you're shy or didn't want to take other people's time, I'll stay on for a few minutes after if you have anything.
Also, Russ, if I could add, the board is interested to know if there are any topics anybody, for example, watching this evening would like for us to go through at these general meetings. That feedback would be great.
Yeah, good comment. Yeah, if you have anything you want to learn about, or if you know about and you would like to, and it's astronomy related, and you'd like to talk about it or present about it, I'm sure that would be welcome too. Okay, well, I appreciate you guys coming. Thanks for listening to me.
Thanks a lot, Russ. Thanks for helping out.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since you're